I like Hamon. That's how I'm gonna start off this video. I'm gonna like clarify it now. I like parts 1 and 2 and their power system of Hamon, the ability to breathe the sun. Don't get me wrong, I do like stands and the 6 parts they show up in a lot. I really do. I think stands are objectively the better power system. As Araki said, the creativity he has with stands is a lot better than he does with Hamon. But with the progress of time moving forward and eventually a classic ability like this gets forgotten by the wayside because of the past, yeah, it makes sense nobody appreciates this early power system. Everybody likes to stare at a new car. They're new, it's cool, what can it do? But every time you see a classic car or just a classic idea, there's almost this awe and respect you give it because it's old, it has character to it. And being old, it comes with this character, this uniqueness that these new cars and other things don't have. Sorry for the whole car analogy, I just feel like I try to make it a little bit more modern with you people. I guess I'm trying to make it a little bit more relatable. Yeah, I think Hamon's cool. I think everybody should respect it. It's a really cool ability. But what is Hamon? I know a lot of people are gonna have their answer to that, but a lot of people genuinelize it and really don't go in with it, so let me explain it. Hamon energy is brought forth by the bloodstream, and by breathing a certain way that Hamon users can do, it can create ripple-like energy through the body, mimicking waves of the sun thanks to this breathing motion, being a complete total opposite to the vampiric powers shown in part 1 as well, as Zeppeli describes the mask bringing out unknown powers from an evil heart from the brain, but in exchange the bearer needs to suck out life energy through others instead of the environment around them. So more or less, both of these abilities, vampiric powers and Hamon, are two sides of the same coin. One is good, one is bad. Just to add a quick writing analysis, even in part 1 through the power system alone is showing good and evil, which is a pretty nice touch by Araki on his part. And thanks to Hamon giving the ability to breathe like the waves of the sun, if a Hamon user were to hit a vampire, the vampire will explode because they just got hit with the sun, their mortal enemy. So that's one giant overview of what Hamon is and what it kinda does. But there's a lot more techniques and nuance with the ability that comes with it. It has a plethora of unique powers. But here's the thing, when people forget about things, nobody remembers them at all because they're never, talked about again. Hamon just gets glumped up into being just the ability to kill vampires. That's it. When there's a lot of uniqueness and a lot more to it. Here's one for you that I don't think a lot of people know. Hamon can dull pain and can heal you. In the first pages Hamon is shown in part 1 Phantom Blood, Zeppeli hits Jonathan, releasing his Hamon in his body, allowing Jonathan's body to dull pain thanks to the Hamon and heal him later on. In a series where a lot of damage occurs to its main characters, the ability to self-heal / dull pain is incredibly useful and is shown very little throughout of all of JoJo's. That's just one unique ability out of a plethora of them. Note here, that is the only healing one. Technically, maybe you can count these as 2, but I'll just count them as 1 for right now, that heal the body thanks to Hamon. The rest I will be talking about are all combat based, in which I think a lot of people want to know. Talking about the most iconic one out of all of them is the Sunset Yellow Overdrive. What does his ability do? Well, at least in this example, Jonathan puts Hamon through his fists and barrage attacks at one of his opponents. It's not really that complicated. It's basically the predecessor to all barrage attacks in JoJo's. Jonathan just punches the enemy vampire, or just the enemy in general, till they just fly away because Jonathan just hit them really, really hard. Very easy to understand here. But the next handful here act a little bit differently when coming into contact with items / inanimate objects that allow Hamon to be a little bit more unique / a lot more creatively powerful. First up being Metal Silver Overdrive. This ability just allows Jonathan or any Hamon user to tap metal objects to insert Hamon into it, attacking a vampire. Another ability that can put Hamon into itself would be Underwater Turquoise Blue Overdrive, where Jonathan in this example puts Hamon in water to attack Buford. Going into part 2, we have Joseph's Cracker Volleys, where Joseph is just able to infuse his Hamon into his Cracker Volleys, making them Hamon infused, and the Pillarmen have to fight that. Joseph has also shown the ability to use Wool String, fighting against AC/DC, infusing Hamon into that, making a trap to beat the Pillarmen, calling it his Ripple Overdrive. Moving on to Caesar Zeppeli and his abilities with bubbles, he can infuse his Hamon into bubbles, allowing for a lot of creative uses with his attacks. Side note that's funny, Caesar also mentions that his clothes are always soapy for this ability to work. Does that mean that like Caesar all the time during part 2 was just moist and like wet, and he just was walking around in wet clothes the entire time? That just sounds uncomfortable. Why would you do that to yourself, Caesar? Anyway, next would be Caesar's soap lenses, where Caesar's able to use his soap lenses as like a magnifying glass, pointing light in different directions, pointing to a villain. That villain in this case would be Wamu. Basically a very unique ability to direct light into a vampire or Pillarman's direction. Now that's all for the combat based abilities. I only talked about a few of them as there are a lot more, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I really need to get into all of them individually individually. Just note that a lot of them do involve Hamon being inserted into some type of object, allowing the Hamon user to defeat whatever villain they're fighting at the time. And if you do want to know the final count, there is 37 unique Hamon abilities shown throughout parts 1 and 2. Note there are a few more, but they are non-canon to the series. Quick detour, I would also like to explain the clothing thing. There are a lot of cases in part 2 where a Hamon master shows skill with the ability to manipulate special beetle clothing with Hamon infused in it, allowing them to become basically weapons or special defensive objects in some cases, as it conducts Hamon a lot better than regular human skin and clothing. So when it comes to offensive and defensive capabilities with Hamon / just Hamon in general, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of unique powers for a Hamon user to do. They have a lot of options to kick your ass, or a lot of people's asses in JoJo's. But here's the thing, a lot of people have this stigmatism that Hamon users are weak for whatever reason. I think this is the case because a lot of YouTubers, and I think just a lot of people in general, just kind of gloss over them for probably a lot of reasons. I'm here to say this, no, they're not. They are comparable to their vampire brethren, I'll say in this example, as William Zappelli in part 1 compares both of them to being the same coin, and in cases where he fights a vampire and says something, that's always comparing Hamon and vampirism. Plus, Hamon users are always fighting characters that are way stronger than them. Example here, Joseph fighting Cars, or Jonathan fighting Dio. These villains always have outlier feats where they survive explosions that realistically they shouldn't, and have speed feats of reacting to UV light sometimes. While sometimes in parts 1 and 2, at least personally for me, I can't really put a concrete number next to these guys' names / you know, the level they're at, they are definitely way above superhuman in some cases. Hamon users are not weak by any means, and definitely can fight some stand users in the series. It's just the more exotic ones are kind of beating their asses some of the time. So yeah, just because Hamon can't be transferred through a living thing because they're not undead like a vampire doesn't mean they can't beat your ass. And speaking about stands and exotic abilities, Hamon does have a few. Both of the abilities I will be talking about only show up once, by the way, but they are Lisa's hypnosis and Tom Petty's precognition. So Lisa's hypnosis is weird. She's able to use her ripple energy to hypnotize somebody and just get information out of them, is what I understand how the ability works. Nothing else is explained, it's just kind of set in an off panel in part 2. She can do it, apparently. She can just contact your subconscious to get information out of you. It's about it. Nothing really else there to talk about. I just thought it was really unique how Lisa could just do that. I guess Hamon masters can just hypnotize anybody and just get information out of them. But the next one I think personally is a lot more interesting, as I need to bring it up for a later topic in the video. Tom Petty's precognition of the future. So it's explained in part 1 that Tom Petty is a master Hamon user. He's like the grandmaster Hamon user of the Tibetan temple, and he's been studying Hamon for such a long time that he just has this ability to precog, or tell a person's future. Note, it's up to interpretation on what the hell he's talking about, as he kind of reads your fortune or reads your future, but it is pretty accurate and it does come true. So yeah, it's like a really good ability. So that's it for Hamon, kind of. I have one more to explain, but I didn't know where to put it in the video because it's kind of really unique. Not exotic, it's not too crazy, but it's pretty powerful. I guess this is probably the strongest ability that any Hamon user can do, but it requires 2 of them. Let me explain. In part 1, at the verge of death, William Zappelli gives the rest of his Hamon to Jonathan, and it is called Supreme Deep Pass Overdrive. And like I said, William gives all of his Hamon to Jonathan, making Jonathan a hell of a lot stronger. In this case of this ability being shown here, in this scene, Jonathan probably got 5 times stronger, as now he is comparable to Dio, as William said previously that Dio was 5 times stronger than him, so you just add those 2 together to come to that conclusion. Note that might vary depending on the scenario. I'm saying that because, well, when Caesar gave the rest of his Hamon to Joseph, we don't know how much stronger Joseph got. Furthermore, I don't know if the other Hamon user has to be near death to actually give the other Hamon user their Hamon, because in both examples, both Zappellis were near death and they gave them their powers, so it might only work near death where this ability might proc, but I don't exactly know, as it's never been fully elaborated. But with basics, yeah, Hamon users can just give more Hamon to another Hamon user. So I hope by now you realize, yeah, Hamon is pretty underrated. There are a lot of powers and abilities here that greatly amplify a human in a 1 in 10,000th chance to actually be a Hamon user. So example here, I'm gonna roughly do the numbers here. I have like 90,000 1,000 subscribers, only 9 of you potentially could be Hamon users. That's a very, very small margin. So yeah, Hamon is extremely underrated and is a powerful ability that is both unique, creative, and just an overall fun experience reading. But the video is still going, you're saying? Yeah. Welcome to the theory / conspiracy part of the rest of the video. So, okay, here's the thing. I've been a JoJo fan for a very long time. I know a lot of facts and trivia about this series to an unhealthy amount, and it's led me down a lot of large and very long lore rabbit holes about this series a number of times. And one of the more interesting ones that involve Hamon is the connection of Hermit Purple and Hamon. Note, for the rest of the video, I am speculating here and theory crafting with you, so don't take this as fact whatsoever. Okay, cool. So, quick overview of Hermit Purple. Hermit Purple has the ability of spirit photography. Basically, you hit or destroy an object, and it will give you a photograph of what you are trying to gather the information of. Like, I don't know, in this example, trying to find Dio, or is Dio alive? Hermit Purple hits a camera or breaks the camera, and boom, you get a picture of that requested object / person. In some cases, the information can be a Google Map-esque map of an area that Hermit Purple can devise for you in dust or sand, or really anything. Apparently, it doesn't have to be electronic, but yeah, Hermit Purple just can gather information for you. Furthermore, it could also act as a range ability, as Joseph has been capable of throwing out Hermit Purple to grab objects, and even able to swing with Hermit Purple in some cases, like he was Spider-Man, and also has the ability to channel his Hamon energy through Hermit Purple. Hermit Purple debuted in chapter 4 of the manga in 1989. Fast forward to November 2nd, 2006. In the Steel Ball Run Extra Chapters 3 cover, we get a very interesting lore segment on spin and stands. Quote, and like the ripple from Phantom Blood and the steel balls from Steel Ball Run, these abilities can be said to be a step towards achieving the ultimate goal of a stand. End quote. So with these two pieces of information, one can assume here that Joseph Joestar probably unlocked Hermit Purple because of his pretty well and long use of Hamon, but there's more. Skipping to 2014, in the second volume of the Jojonium in Stars Crusaders, talking about Joseph Joestar, here is a quote. One of the things I wanted to do from the beginning of JoJo was visually represent supernatural abilities. The stand is a succession of the ripple, and both are rooted in the same concept, with Joseph returning in part 3. I wondered how to visualize the ripple in terms of a stand. The ripple is life energy which spreads across the whole body through breathing methods. The vines are meant to be an explicit visual representation of that, literally wrapping themselves around his body. If Jotaro and the rest of the stand using crew went back 50 years prior, maybe he could have seen a younger Joseph using Hermit Purple. End quote. So what this technically means here, Hamon has the ability to give you a stand. More precisely, your Hamon energy gets a stand. But how do you even prove that? Well, going back to Steel Ball Run on that extra chapters page, Ball Breaker. Gyro Zeppeli throws his steel ball so hard and so precisely thanks to his horse and the golden rotation, he is able to use Ball Breaker, a Zeppeli family technique that's able to break through any defense. There is so much spin energy around the steel ball, it manifests a stand-like thing. Note, this is not Gyro's stand, it is Gyro's steel balls' stand-like energy. Now, why I say that is there is a clear connection between these two abilities. So if that's how it works with Gyro, I'm going to assume with all this information and all this evidence that it also vice versa works with other Hamon users, in this case Joseph Joestar, meaning that Joseph Joestar wasn't a stand user, his Hamon energy that he's able to produce had a stand that he was able to manipulate, therefore making him a stand user. Note, there might be some stand shenanigans with that, just FYI, but yeah, it was written almost like 20 or 30 years ago when Steel Ball Run was being made, so of course there might be some continuity errors. But on the case that it actually is true and all this evidence is proven to be right, just in case, that technically means that Gyro and Joseph don't have stands of their own bodies. And there isn't any scenario where like a character has two stands, right, in the series that involve Hermit Purple, or at least a Hermit Purple like stand, right? Enter Dio in part 3, bro. He has two stands, he has Hermit Purple, or at least Jonathan's Hermit Purple, and the world. And here's the thing, you need psychic energy, or at least your own body's will, to make a stand, and Jonathan's body was kind of dead, and the only living thing in Jonathan at the time was his leftover Hamon. So I'm assuming here that the stand arrow that Dio hit himself with reacted to Jonathan's Hamon, allowing a Hermit Purple like Jonathan stand to appear in his body too, that Dio was eventually able to manipulate as well, meaning that yeah, you can have two stands in the series through some very very weird stand shenanigans probably, but if the previous theory is to be presumed correct, yeah, technically somebody can have 2 stands. But you know, that quote previously from the Jojonim also says, you know, Joseph had Hermit Purple back in part 2, but there's no evidence for that. Pulls up the narrator saying Joseph didn't understand why he grabbed the Stone of Aja, and then also pull up the Giorno thing where his stand unconsciously like activated during his childhood, even though he didn't know what a stand was. Yeah, Joseph definitely had Hermit Purple back in part 2. Like, I'm just saying that now. Furthermore, Joseph Joestar probably didn't even use Hermit Purple correctly at all because he was a weak Hamon user by the time part 3 happened. And we know that stands can evolve and progressively get stronger over time. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Tom Petty's future vision, which is so abstract and exotic to the whole breathing Hamon thing and how he can see into the future, was actually a stand ability. If he can gather information from the future, that sounds a lot like a stand ability and sounds a lot like Hermit Purple's information gathering. I'm just saying there is a lot of coincidences here that just add up to a lot of people having probably Hermit Purple and a very, very powerful stand ability that we just didn't see fully realized. I want you to imagine with me here at the very end, a Jotaro Kuja with 2 stands, Star Platinum of the World and Hermit Purple. This Jotaro has all these stand abilities, has the ability to punch really hard, the ability to time stop, the ability now having longer range thanks to Hermit Purple, and spirit photography, and potentially the ability to maybe see into the future thanks to Hamon. On top of that, all of those Hamon abilities that I previously mentioned in the earlier part of this video. That's a lot of powers. That is a lot of abilities. That is regeneration, healing technically, pain resilience, and just Hamon to fight other people with and just getting naturally stronger because of it. And I didn't just use Jotaro as a random example. Gaining Hamon is a recessive family trait. Being related to one means that you have a higher chances of actually having it, or having it in general. So everybody who is related to Jonathan has the potentiality of having Hamon. So yeah, I'd like to leave you with that. Everybody in the Joestar clan can have Hamon and be ridiculously overpowered in combination with their stand. It just takes one pinky jab to the chest to unlock it. If you don't think Hamon is critically underrated after all of that, even if my theory wasn't true, then damn man, you're just hating for real. But like, yeah, Hamon is critically underrated, and if that theory is true, it's severely critically underrated. I just wish it just had more opportunities to be back in the anime and manga and really any form of medium again, just because I like it so much. Well, that's going to be the end of the video. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, stay hydrated. See you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen.